I won $50 million in the lottery and told no one. Instead, I went to my family's Sunday dinner, pretended I was broke, and called my wealthy sister to beg for help, just to see what she would do. She laughed at me. My brother told me I was a bad investment. But the one person who offered me her entire life savings? Before we get into it, a quick question. What would you do first if you won the lottery? Let me know your dream in the comments. And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's go back to the moment it all began. The moment the world splits in two, it doesn't make a sound. For me, it happened on a Tuesday night in my small, quiet apartment, under the pale, buzzing light of my kitchen fluorescent. I was sitting at my small table, a cup of tea in one hand, the forgotten lottery ticket I had bought on a whim in the other. I was checking the numbers online, a mindless, weekly ritual of idle fantasy. And then the fantasy stopped being a fantasy. The first number matched, then the second, then the third. A strange electric hum started in my ears. Fourth, fifth, my breath caught in my throat. I checked the final Powerball number. It matched. A single, perfect, impossible line of numbers that stared back at me from the screen, rearranging the entire molecular structure of my life. $50 million. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the silent, buzzing kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs, a profound and terrifying sense of vertigo washing over me. The life of Juliet, the humble, underpaid, and perpetually disappointing elementary school teacher, was over. And I had no idea who or what was supposed to come next. My first coherent thought was not of celebration. It was of them, my family. My older sister, Clarissa, a high-powered attorney who measured love in billable hours. My brother, Sebastian, a smug investment banker who saw the world as a series of profitable and unprofitable assets. And me, the sweet but simple one, the one they treated with a kind, loving, and soul-crushing condescension at every family gathering. For years, I had been the family's pet project, their charity case. They loved me, I suppose, in their own way, but their love was always tinged with a faint but unmistakable air of pity. They saw my choice to be a teacher not as a noble calling, but as a lack of ambition. My small, cozy apartment was not a home. It was evidence of my financial failure. And as I sat there, looking at a piece of paper that could buy and sell their entire arrogant world 10 times over, a new, cold, and deeply unsettling thought began to form. This money, it didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like a weapon, a test. I knew that the moment I told them, the dynamic would shift. Their pity would transform into a hungry, grasping, and perhaps even resentful form of attention. They would see the money, not me. And so, in the quiet of that Tuesday night, I made a decision. A terrible, painful, and necessary one. Before I became the woman who had won the lottery, I needed to know, once and for all, who my family truly was. I decided to conduct one final, secret test of their character. I would not tell them about my fortune. Instead, I would tell them I had lost everything. The stage for my performance was our regular Sunday dinner at my parents' grand, imposing house. I drove there, the $50 million lottery ticket tucked safely into a hidden pocket in my purse, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I was about to perform the role they had always cast me in, the poor, struggling, unsuccessful sister who needed their help. I was just acting. I had no idea that inside that house, 2 other people were about to give the performance of their lives, and theirs would be brutally, horribly, and unforgivably real. I walked into my parents' house, the familiar scent of my mother's Sunday roast and expensive potpourri filling the air. It was a scent that should have felt like home, but to me, it had always smelled faintly of disappointment. I was greeted with the usual flurry of polite, surface-level affections. My mother kissed the air near my cheek, my father patted my shoulder, and my siblings, my brilliant, successful, and emotionally distant older siblings, Clarissa and Sebastian, gave me the same pitying, affectionate smiles they had been giving me my entire life. The dinner conversation was a performance of the Prescott family's success. Clarissa, the high-powered attorney, recounted a recent brutal courtroom victory. Sebastian, the smug investment banker, bragged about a multi-million-dollar deal he had just closed. They were a duet of ambition, and I was their silent, off-key audience. I just pushed my food around my plate, playing my part. The quiet, sweet but simple school teacher, a role they had so lovingly and so cruelly assigned to me. The only person at that table who looked at me with what I knew to be genuine, uncomplicated warmth was Elena. She was our family's housekeeper, a woman who had been with my parents for over 30 years. She had been more of a mother to me than my own mother had ever been. She was the one who had bandaged my scraped knees as a child, who had helped me with my homework, who had quietly slipped me a $20 bill when I was a broke college student. As she moved silently around the dining room, refilling water glasses, her eyes would occasionally meet mine, and she would give me a small, secret, and deeply comforting smile. She was the only other person in this house who knew the truth of my family's cold, hard heart. After the dinner plates were cleared, I knew it was time. The performance was about to begin. I took a deep breath and I let the carefully constructed mask of cheerful contentment I had been wearing all evening fall away. I allowed a look of profound and entirely fake distress to wash over my features. "I'm so sorry to do this," I began, my voice a carefully crafted, trembling whisper. "To ruin a lovely family dinner, but I'm in terrible trouble." Every head at the table turned in my direction, their expressions shifting from bored contentment to a new, intrigued curiosity. "I just got a call on the way over here. It's it's a medical emergency, a problem with my spine. The doctors say I need an urgent and very expensive surgery, and my teacher's insurance, it won't cover it. They're asking for a $50,000 deposit, or they won't do the procedure." I buried my face in my hands. "I'm going to lose my apartment. I'm going to lose everything." I looked up, my eyes full of a desperate, pleading hope, and I looked directly at my sister, Clarissa. "I hate to ask, but I don't know who else to turn to. Could you possibly, could you lend me the money?" I stepped out of the dining room and into the quiet, formal study to make the call, leaving the door slightly ajar. I knew Elena was still in the dining room clearing the dessert plates. I dialed my sister's number. She answered immediately. "What is it, Juliet?" she asked, her voice a low, annoyed hiss. I repeated my desperate, tearful plea. The silence on the other end of the line was long and cold. "Juliet, listen to me," she finally said, her voice devoid of any sympathy, a cold, clinical tone of a lawyer addressing a particularly stupid client. "This is not a medical emergency. This is a crisis of your own making. It is a fundamental failure to plan for your own future. I cannot and will not enable your financial irresponsibility by simply giving you money." "But I'll pay you back," I cried. "Every penny, with interest." "No, you won't," she said flatly. "I am a lawyer, Juliet, not a bank, and you are a bad risk." A pause. "I will do this for you. I will email you the name and number of a very good debt counselor. That is the best I can do. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet." And then she hung up. I stood in the silent study, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, a real, genuine, and deeply painful ache in my chest. Her cruelty, her immediate and total lack of compassion, was even worse than I had imagined. I took another deep breath and dialed my brother, Sebastian. I repeated my performance, my voice now laced with the very real pain of my sister's rejection. His reaction was, if possible, even worse. He laughed, a short, sharp, and utterly incredulous laugh. $50,000? He said. Are you insane? Juliet, you have no assets, no real income to speak of. That's not a loan, that's a gift. And frankly, he said, his voice taking on the smug, lecturing tone he always used, I'm not in the business of making charitable donations to people who make bad life choices. My advice to you is to sell your apartment, declare bankruptcy, and learn from this. Consider this a tough love lesson in financial reality. He, too, then hung up. I walked back into the dining room, my face a genuine mask of heartbreak. My parents offered me a few empty and useless platitudes. Oh, honey, they're right, you know. It's for the best. They were not my allies. They were theirs. My test was complete. My family was exactly who I thought they were. As I was leaving the house later that night, feeling completely and totally alone in the world, a small, gentle hand touched my arm in the foyer. It was Elena. Her own eyes were full of a deep, profound, and genuine sadness. She had clearly overheard every word. She didn't say much, she just pressed a small, worn, and slightly lumpy envelope into my hand. I know it is not my place, Miss Juliet, she whispered, her voice thick with a kindness that felt like a lifeline in my ocean of grief. And I know it is not much, but you have always been so kind to me, and to my own family. My husband and I, this is our life savings, for our retirement. She pushed the envelope more firmly into my hand. You are family. Please, take this. Do not lose your home because of them. I looked at the small, lumpy envelope in my hand. It was probably a few hundred, maybe a few $1,000s, the kind gesture of a woman who had almost nothing. I didn't have the heart in that moment to tell her that I didn't need it. I had no idea that what was inside that envelope was not just a small amount of cash. It was her entire life savings. And it was a testament of love so pure, so profound, that it was about to change both of our lives and in the lives of the family who had just so coldly rejected me forever. I stood in the grand, silent foyer of my parents' house, the heavy oak door a final barrier between me and the cold, indifferent night. My heart was a hollow, aching void. The cruel, dismissive words of my brother and sister echoed in my mind, a final, definitive confirmation of a truth I had always known but had never wanted to believe. To them, I was not family. I was a liability, a charity case, a bad investment. As I reached for the doorknob, ready to retreat back into my small, lonely life, a quiet voice behind me stopped me cold. Miss Juliet? I turned. It was Elena, the family's housekeeper, a woman whose presence in this house had been so constant and so quiet for 30 years that she had become almost invisible. She stood there, her hands twisting nervously in the fabric of her simple apron, her kind, wrinkled face a mask of profound and deeply felt sympathy. In her hand, she held a small, worn, and slightly lumpy white envelope. I know it is not my place, she began, her voice a low, hesitant whisper. She glanced nervously back towards the dining room, where I could still hear the faint, cheerful clinking of wine glasses. And I pray you forgive me for my impertinence, but the door to the study, it was open. I could not help but overhear your conversations, with your sister, with your brother. She took a step closer, her eyes the color of warm, dark honey, full of a pain that was not her own, but that she clearly felt on my behalf. It is not right, she whispered, her voice shaking with a quiet, suppressed anger. What they said to you, the way they spoke to you, you are family. And family, she said, her voice now full of an unshakable, simple conviction, is supposed to help family. She then pushed the small, worn, and slightly lumpy white envelope into my hand. It was soft from years of use, and I could feel the lump of folded papers inside. I know it is not much, she continued, her eyes now shining with unshed tears. My husband and I,
We have been saving for our retirement, for a small house of our own one day. But you, Miss Juliet, you have always been so kind to me, to my own children when they were small. You are like a daughter to me, and a home is more important than a retirement. She closed my fingers over the envelope with her own warm, work-roughened hand. Please, she whispered, take this. Do not lose your home because of their cold hearts. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. I was speechless. I was completely and totally overwhelmed by this act of pure, selfless, and unconditional love. This woman, who had so little, was offering me everything she had, without a moment's hesitation. The contrast between her profound generosity and my own siblings' cold, calculating cruelty was a physical, staggering blow. Elena, I cannot take this. This is your future, your dream. You and your husband worked your entire lives for this. Our dream, she said, with a small, sad, and beautiful smile, was to be safe and to see our family happy. I am safe enough, and right now, you are not happy. It was in that moment that my entire plan, my entire world shifted. My test had been a test of character, designed to reveal the true nature of my family, and it had succeeded beyond my wildest expectations. It had revealed Clarissa and Sebastian as the selfish, heartless people I had always feared they were. But it had also, unexpectedly, revealed a truth I had never seen before, that this quiet, humble, and endlessly kind woman, the woman who had served my family for 30 years, was the only one in this entire, magnificent, and very cold house who truly understood the meaning of the word. And she was the only one who deserved to know the truth. You are right, I said, a new, strange, and wonderful resolve flooding through me. You are my family. You are the only real family I have in this house. I took her hand and led her to a small, quiet bench in the grand foyer. And that is why I cannot accept your gift. And it is why I need to show you something.
I opened her small, worn envelope. Inside was not cash. It was a simple, old-fashioned passbook for a local savings and loan. I opened it. The balance, the result of 30 years of careful, painstaking saving, was a little over $7,000. Her entire life's savings. This, I said, my voice thick with emotion as I handed it back to her, is the most beautiful and most valuable gift I have ever been given, and it is yours. I then reached into my own purse. My hand closed around the small, folded, and unassuming piece of paper that had been a secret, burning weight in my pocket all night. I pulled it out and unfolded it. I handed the winning lottery ticket to Elena. She took it, her expression one of utter confusion. "What is this, honey?" she asked, her eyes trying to make sense of the long string of numbers. "That, Elena," I said, a slow, real, and truly happy smile finally spreading across my face, "is a $50 million winning lottery ticket. My lottery ticket." I then placed my hand over hers, the one still holding her precious savings account passbook. "And you," I said, my voice now clear and strong, "are the only person in this entire miserable family who has proven they deserve to share in it." I watched as her eyes scanned the ticket and then looked back at my face, and I saw the moment that the impossible, world-altering truth finally dawned on her. The look of stunned, disbelieving, and tearful joy on her face was a sight of such profound beauty that it healed a part of my heart I thought had been broken forever. My initial test was over. The results were in. But in the quiet of that grand foyer, my grandmother's plan— my apologies, that was a different story. My grandmother was not in this story. Let's correct. I looked at Alina's shocked, beautiful face, and I knew what I had to do next. My initial test was over, but the results had given me a new and far better plan. I wasn't just going to disown my siblings.
I was going to replace them. And the grand, formal family meeting I was about to call was going to be a celebration not of their inherited wealth, but of her earned and truly profound worth. I looked at Elena's shocked, beautiful, and tear-streaked face, the $50 million lottery ticket held loosely in her trembling hand, and I knew, with an absolute and total certainty, what I had to do next. My initial test was over. My siblings, Clarissa and Sebastian, had failed spectacularly, but the results of that test had given me a new and far more profound purpose. I wasn't just going to disown them from my future. I was going to rewrite the very definition of my family. Elena, I said, my voice full of a new, calm authority, I'm going to call a meeting with my siblings and a new lawyer, and I need you to be there. Me, Miss Juliet? She whispered, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. But it is not my place. I am just the housekeeper. No, I said, taking her work-roughened hand in my own. You are the heart of this family, and it's long past time everyone understood that. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday in the sterile, intimidating conference room of a top-tier estate lawyer I had hired. I arrived with Elena at my side. I had insisted she wear her best Sunday dress, and she looked nervous but elegant, a quiet, dignified presence in a world she had only ever served from the shadows. My siblings arrived a few minutes later, their expression a mask of impatient annoyance. They saw Elena sitting beside me and exchanged a look of pure, condescending confusion.
Elena? My sister Clarissa asked, her voice sharp with an unearned authority. What on earth are you doing here? This is a private family matter. You should be at the house. Elena is here at my personal invitation, I said, my voice cool and even, cutting her off before she could continue. She is the guest of honor. Please, take a seat. They sat, their faces a mixture of confusion and a growing, sullen resentment. They thought they were here for another one of my pathetic, emotional pleas for money. My new lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss Albright, began the meeting. Thank you all for coming, she said, her voice crisp and professional. We are here today at the request of my client, Miss Juliet Prescott, to discuss a recent and significant change in her financial circumstances. Clarissa and Sebastian exchanged another look, this one of smug, weary boredom. They were preparing themselves for another one of my life crises. Miss Prescott, the lawyer continued, has recently become the sole beneficiary of the state lottery jackpot. The final after-tax sum, she consulted her notes, is $50,321,000. The silence in the room was absolute. I watched as my siblings' faces went through a rapid, almost comical series of transformations. First, a look of pure, slack-jawed and utter disbelief. Then, as the reality of the number sank in, their expressions began to change. The cold, bored annoyance melted away, replaced by a new, frantic, and utterly false look of joyful excitement. "Juliet!" Sebastian exclaimed, his voice a booming, artificial sound of delight. "Oh my God, that's incredible! Why didn't you tell us? This is the best news in the world!" "Darling, we are so happy for you. A celebration is in order. We have to—" Miss Albright held up a single, elegant hand, silencing them instantly. "If I may continue," she said, her voice as cold as ice. "My client has already taken steps to manage her new assets. She has, as of this morning, established a new family trust." My siblings leaned forward in their chairs, their eyes glittering with a raw, undisguised greed. This was it, the moment they found out how much they were getting. "The first official act of this trust," my lawyer continued, reading from a thick legal document, "is the purchase of a new, 4-bedroom, mortgage-free home for a Miss Elena Rivera." She looked up and smiled warmly at my housekeeper. "And in addition, the establishment of a fully funded, multi-million-dollar retirement account in her name to be managed by this firm, in recognition of her lifetime of unwavering loyalty, her profound love, and a moral character that has proven to be this family's greatest and only true asset." A new, more profound, and deeply confused silence fell over the room. My siblings just stared,
their minds clearly unable to process this information. They looked from the lawyer to the tearful, overwhelmed Elena, and then finally to me. What what about us? Sebastian finally stammered, his voice a small, pathetic squeak. We're her brother and sister, we're her family. I spoke then, for the very first time. Yes, you are, I said, my voice quiet but with no trace of weakness. You are my family, which is why last week, when I was in a desperate, fictitious crisis, I came to you for help. I looked at my sister. You, I said, offered me the name of a debt counselor and told me I was irresponsible. I then looked at my brother. And you, I said, told me I was a bad investment and hung up on me.
I then turned to Elena, who was now weeping with a quiet, disbelieving joy. And Elena, I said, my own voice now thick with emotion. She offered me everything she had, her entire life savings. She offered me her future. I looked back at my stunned, horrified siblings. So, I have made a decision. I am giving my new family member, Elena, the future she so richly deserves. And I am giving the two of you, I said, as my lawyer slid two small, glossy pamphlets across the polished table towards them, the exact same thing you offered me in my time of need. They looked down. They were brochures, one for a debt counseling service, the other for a beginner's course in financial planning. I believe, I said, a slow, cold, and deeply satisfying smile on my face, my brother called it a tough love lesson in financial reality. They just stared at the pamphlets, then at me, their faces a ruin of pure, impotent rage. They had failed a test they hadn't even known they were taking, and in doing so, they had lost a fortune. But as I looked at Elena, at her beautiful, weeping face, a face full of a joy so profound it seemed to light up the entire cold and sterile room, I knew my vindication wasn't in their loss. It was in her victory. And the real and far more rewarding work of building a new and better family was just about to begin. The silence in the lawyer's conference room in the wake of my announcement was a thick, suffocating thing. My siblings, Clarissa and Sebastian, just stared, their faces a ghastly, pale mask of pure, uncomprehending rage. The greedy, fawning excitement they had displayed just moments before had curdled into a look of raw, ugly hatred. It was my brother, Sebastian, who broke first. "You can't be serious," he hissed, his voice a low, trembling whisper. "You're giving our family's money to the help?" "She is not the help," I replied, my voice as cold and as calm as a frozen lake. "She is Elena, and she is more family to me than you have ever been." I stood up. The meeting now concluded in my mind. I walked over to Elena, who was still sitting in her chair, weeping with a quiet, disbelieving joy, and I took her hand. "Come on, Elena. Let's go home." As we walked out of that office, leaving my brother and sister to the wreckage of their own greed, I could hear their shouts erupting behind us. Threats of lawsuits, accusations of insanity, cries of betrayal. It was all just noise. The pathetic, impotent rage of two people who had just been handed a mirror and were horrified by the reflection they saw. The fallout was, as expected, messy. My siblings did try to fight it. Clarissa, in her professional capacity as a ruthless lawyer, tried to contest my mental competence, claiming I had been unduly influenced by a manipulative servant. It was a desperate, ugly, and ultimately futile battle. The trust I had established was ironclad, and their own words, their own cold-hearted rejections during my test, were a truth they could not run from. My parents, caught in the middle, tried to broker a peace, which was their coded language for trying to guilt me into giving my siblings the money they felt they were entitled to. I had
One final and very quiet phone call with my mother. "They are your brother and your sister, Juliet," she had pleaded. "Blood is blood. You have to be the bigger person." "I was the bigger person my entire life, Mom," I had replied, my voice full of a sad, weary finality. "I was the bigger person when they mocked my career. I was the bigger person when they belittled my life. The test I set for them was not about money. It was about a single, simple act of compassion. And they failed. The results are final." I had then, with a heavy but resolute heart, told her that I needed space, and I had stopped taking their calls. My real life, my new life, had begun, and its first and most joyful project was Elena. I did not just give her a check, I gave her my time. We spent the next month together, a happy, joyous blur of activity. We went house hunting. I watched, my own heart full, as this humble, selfless woman who had spent 30 years quietly cleaning up after my family's messes walked through beautiful homes, her eyes wide with a wonder she had never allowed herself to feel. She was so used to a life of service that she found it almost impossible to accept that she was now the one being served. We found the perfect house for her and her husband, a lovely little brick home with a magnificent garden, a place where she could finally, after a lifetime of work, rest. But my gift to her was not just about money. It was about respect. I hired a team of the best financial advisors in the city, the same ones my brother had always used, and I had them create a comprehensive retirement plan for Elena and her husband, an ironclad portfolio that would ensure they would be safe and secure for the rest of their lives. I made sure my siblings knew which firm I had hired. It was a small, final, and deeply satisfying twist of the knife. It has been a year now. The noise from my old family has faded into a distant, irrelevant silence. My new life, the one I am building on my own terms, is quiet and it is good. This afternoon, I am sitting in a beautiful, sun-drenched garden, a cup of tea in my hands. It is not my parents' garden. It is Elena's. She's a few feet away, laughing, her hands covered in dirt as she teaches her own small grandchildren how to plant roses. She is not a housekeeper. She is a matriarch, the queen of her own beautiful, happy kingdom. I think about the $50 million. In a way, it was a curse. It showed me the cold, transactional, and empty truth of the family I had been born into. But it was also a profound and beautiful blessing. It gave me the power to reward a lifetime of quiet goodness, to honor a woman of true and noble character. It gave me the power to create a new family, a better family, one that was built not on the accident of blood, but on the deliberate and beautiful choice of love. I did not lose a brother and a sister. I just finally and clearly saw that they had never really been there at all. And in their place, I had gained a woman who had taught me the true meaning of the word. I looked over at Elena, at her happy, smiling face, and I knew, with a certainty so profound it was the new bedrock of my life, that I was the richest woman in the world.
An absolutely beautiful and heartwarming story about how true family is measured by love, not by blood. What do you think of Juliet's decision to reward the housekeeper? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were moved by this incredible story of kindness being rewarded, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more powerful and emotional stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.